that you would plan to get married next week. It's a bit too late to leave it till next year, because you'll end up sleeping with each other, because you're already starting on the physical side of your relationship, which God had intended for it to be left until the honeymoon night. Okay? So those things, you keep away from them. If you already started, if this comes in too late, well, be married. Be married soon. It doesn't have to be a big thing. I know that, and it's really sad to me now, every time I turn up to a Tongan wedding and the bride is almost giving birth. It's towards the end of her pregnancy. I don't think that's a good thing. You guys should regard that as a shame. We live in our culture, Tongan culture, it's a shame and honor culture. It used to be something of a shame in the past, but now I'm not sure what has happened to us Christian Tongans. We still want to be married and do a big, a wedding party about celebrating that. I don't think it should be celebrated. I tell my boys, if you impregnate a girl, you should just go silently, be married to her. I don't want to know. I want you to just come back and say you're already married to a girl, right? Because I've done something wrong, Dad. And here we are. And then I'll bless you and I'll support you and I'll be... But yeah, we need to send out this message to our parents, because usually I see big Tongan wedding is really about the parents, not really about the couple who are getting married. It's really about the parents showing off their koloa and everything, which is a waste of time, because it doesn't keep us married for the long haul, right? We don't need that sort of thing. But yeah, of course, I know that it comes too late. I'm happy if you're already married. Work hard in your marriage. Usually, if you stay together before marriage, it's very hard to keep your marriage. That's what statistics tells me. But God is merciful. Our God is able to do it. And so pray. If you are single and you want to get married, pray. Okay? What if you have failed in the area of sexual sin? Well, if you haven't failed, don't plan to fail, right? If you are still, a virgin, you know how our culture now is making it a bad thing to be a virgin after 20? If you're 16 and you're still a virgin, the Australian culture seem to make it out that's a bad thing. But that's just silly. They push a lot of girls and boys into practicing sex when they didn't really want it, because everyone else is losing their virginity. You keep your virginity if you haven't lost it, right? It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a godly thing. It's really a special thing. You see, if you buy a second-hand car, a bomb, as they say, you'll be happy to give it around, wouldn't you? But if you own a a Porsche or one of those most expensive cars, is it Lamborghini or whatever it is? It sounds like beginning to me, but I found out that it's a car. But anyway, if you own one of those expensive cars, you know what I mean. It'll be really hard for you to give it to anyone who come to borrow a car, right? You won't lend it to anybody. See, that's how you should look at it. That's how you should look at your sexuality. It's a Lamborghini or one of those expensive cars. So, but if you have failed sexually, Jesus forgives sin. When you are married, you'll have to stay in there till the end. So if you're already married, God's will is for you to stay with that person, because God hates divorce. So it is God's will. So don't sit there and think about, maybe I should have married Sam, but I end up with John. No, John is the one God has intended for you. Or if you're a guy and you sit there thinking, I should have married Rachel, but I end up with Suzanne. No, Suzanne is God's will for you, because once you are married, God says in your marriage that the two shall become one, and no man should put this asunder. So choose carefully, that's what I'm saying. Choose carefully and prayerfully. You can see the best of the person you're dating when you're going out with them, especially if you are in a church together. In the church context, that's where you see the best of the person. You see how they relate. And you must remember that if you're dating someone, that's the best they're giving you now when you're dating, right? And if you're dating and they're telling you lies and they're abusing you and they're swearing at you and they're doing all kinds of looking down at you, it will be worse when you get married. That's not the kind of guy or girls to be with, right? Get away from them as quick as you can, because the best they can give you is now. You know, if you tell them something and they're not doing it now while you're still dating, if you tell them to stop drinking and they're not stop drinking while you're dating, let me tell you, it'd be worse once you get married, right? So it's not the kind of person to be with. But if you sin sexually and you both are not married, get married. I don't see the problem. You see, the Bible says that, you know, the desire for sex is good enough reason to be married. If you can't resist that kind of desire to have sex with your boyfriend or girlfriend, go and get married. And if you have, it's a good reason now to get married. Confess your sins to God and to spouse. If you have failed in your marriage, right? I know that for us guys and girls, if you've done something in the past while you are married, if you sin sexually, been unfaithful to your partner, and you think, oh, I'm not telling them because it will wreck the relationship. No, you're wrecking the relationship by not telling them. Let me say that, because you're living a lie, see? And no one lives a lie until the end. They will be destroyed by the lie. Why is that? Because lying is destructive. Lying comes from Satan, says Jesus in John 8. So it'll be good if you have done something in the past while you're married and you haven't admitted to your wife or husband. After this, be the best time to say, look, you know, I didn't tell you this, but this is what happened, and I really want to ask you forgiveness, and I'm happy to give you time to try to forgive me, but I have repented of it, and I really regret it, and I don't want to do it, but I want to be with you. So, I mean, why is it so hard to say things like that? Confess it to your spouse and then pray and then give them time to forgive you. And after today, if that's what you'll be doing after this, after today, you should never mention that again in your marriage. And you should ask your partner, your wife, not to mention it to you anymore, because the more you mention it, the worse it becomes, because then you relive the experience. But forgiveness, you have to learn to forgive, and you do away with it. And this is why I said, you know, you should give your partner some times to learn to forgive. Give them some breathing space, because what you've done, you know, sexual sin inside marriage is the worst thing that can happen in a marriage. Being faithless, worst that could happen. I'll stop sharing now because I saw that a lot of chatting has happened. I'm not sure what's been happening. Let me see if there's more question there. But thank you very much. I was sent about 20 or 30 questions, and I want to go and answer it. But are there any comments before I go into the questions? Any comments? Any quick questions from here?
I do have a question, just with the whole the context of just marrying when you do fall pregnant.
Yeah.
So you would say to just do it for the sake of it and not really just yeah.
Yeah.
My question is, just marry them even if there is no sense of love, or.
Okay, well, I mean, if what I mean is, if you are living with the person, if you fall pregnant to this person and you want to marry them, you should get married. You should go away and get married. But usually, you see, I mean, if you fall pregnant to a very unloving man who would then decide to leave you, or if you had just wanted just to fall pregnant, I think that's a totally different issue, because. But what I'm saying is, I'm really saddened every time I'm invited to a Tongan wedding, and you get there and the bride is towards the end of her pregnancy. And here is a huge celebration, sending a very wrong message to the rest of the Tongan young people here, that this is a good thing to do because it gets celebrated in our culture. Yeah, what I'm saying is, you know, if you love the person, just go away and get married. There's no need to have a big wedding celebration just be married, just get married. And you know, the real challenge is after you get married, you stay on, that you to stay till the end. As I said, marriage is just like the Christian life. The first 60 years of marriage is the hardest. So, I mean, my friend here who shared today had been married for 11 years. You've got another 50 to go, brother. The first 60 years of marriage is usually the hardest, and then after that, you're with the Lord. If you're still around, you be happy, you don't understand each other anymore. But anyway, yes. Did I answer you? So yeah, if you are pregnant to a person you love, and guys, I mean, I need to speak to the guys at this point, because it's usually the guys who don't have any commitment, and you just decide to live with the girl because you're really in your heart. Let me challenge you guys who are doing that. Really in your heart, you're not committed to this person. You're really looking for the next person. That's why you're not willing to be married to the person. You are a very unloving man, irresponsible, who keep on looking for the fulfillment of your flesh. And people like that will end up badly, because, you know, such unloving people don't deserve to be fathers of children. Do you know what I mean? The kids who grew up and know that their dad didn't love their mum, it's usually, you know, not a good relationship during life. So if you're a guy and if you have some guys who are your relatives who are doing this, you need to have some words to them. If they're Tongans, they know what you mean, right? If they're Balangi, it's a different story. But if they're Tongans, you know, just say to them, look, guys, got to be honest, because you're not committed to this relationship. That's why you are deferring marriage. You wait till you have 3 or 4 kids to be sure. That's not on. See, that's you using the other person just to fulfill your own sexual appetite. You know, it's yeah. Any other questions? Any other comments? You can always stop me while I'm answering the questions, and so when you stop me, don't lift up your hands like this, because I probably won't be able to see you. Just say, Reverend. So when you mention my name or say Mafu, then I know, and I'll stop and I'll answer your questions, right? Yes, arranged marriage, I'm going to answer that. Let me just have a quick browse through the comments. So I can see, yeah, run to the door, run to the park. Yes, I think you know these guys, right? Well, when we have this strong desire, this strong urge, and just the two of us in a room, the girl thinks that your feeling as a guy is like her, right? Deep. When we're so superficial, that the solution is just to say, mate, just walk to the door and walk back. It'll be gone by then, right? I think, yeah, we need to be practical sometimes. Yes. Run off.
Can I just say
yes.
something, please?
Sure.
Okay, so I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation, and I think it's really, really important that we do speak to our kids about the importance of marriage, and also the importance of waiting when they are single. Now, does your son have a girlfriend? Because I have a daughter that's 21. So
we can arrange for them. No, I believe
arranged marriages.
I believe in arranged marriage. Honestly, you know, I believe in C, because you see, I'll talk about it later on. But you see, think about this. We have been lied to in this culture that marriage is about falling in love. I mean, my brother here, who was just giving his testimony, being married for 11 years, I'm sure you're falling in love when they're at the door on the first night of the marriage, isn't it? After the wedding, it's gone. The feeling of being in love it's gone after the wedding day, right? And then for 11 years, what you guys have done is learning to be committed to each other. And that's what true love is saying to yourself, look, you know, I don't think I can live with this person, but God's will is for me to live with him or her, and therefore I'm going to ask God to help me to love this person, and I will love this person till death do us apart. So it's good to speak good things into your life, right? But then that's what I think I believe that. I believe in arranged marriage, and maybe we can talk about this. My son is... Iyo. Koe. Koe ko starange o starange ke ku kaureka. I told my boys when I spoke with them, I said, when I had the sex talk with them, I said, look, I'm going to look for wives for you, okay? So concentrate on your studies and and being Christians. Dad is looking for a wife for you. And, I know that I've been praying, and I told my son's been checking with me, my 20-year-old, who's turning 21, has been checking with me. We find kind of funny. We always have this laugh about it. But yes, I do believe in that sort of thing.
And I also loved La and Mimi. It's the first time for me to meet a lot of these people here today. I loved your testimony.
Yes.
Because, and I also think it's encouraging for our youth. And I might even ask if we can do this presentation one night with our youth here in Melbourne.
Yes.
I think it'd be fantastic for them to hear it.
Yep.
And so thank you so much, Mia, for inviting me to be part of this. I don't know all of you, but it's been really informative. And Mia and I just sit here giggling because she's not married yet. So Mia, you better get moving.
Well, baby, let's hope and pray, see Hai, that after today they'll be convinced of arranged marriage. They will come to us. Okay, let me go through the questions, and if you have some new questions that I won't be addressing here, please do send a chat message in there. I don't think my phone will be good, but just send a chat message or just stop me. But I think most of your questions, I already got them, so I'm going to go through them. The first question is this: can a woman have intimacy with a man? Is intimacy a sin? I have two things to say about it. Firstly, intimacy with any man who is not your husband is a sin. But secondly, intimacy with your husband is pure. It's not a sin. It's perfect. It's what God has designed for you. And the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 7, let me read that to you because usually no one seems to know this. And this is Paul's advice for young men and women, single, in church, and even for the married. And this is 1 Corinthians 7. I read from verses 1 to 5. Now, for the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. But since sexual immorality is occurring, each man should have sexual relations with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer, then come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So if you are married, the Bible says, have sex more often, right? Only stop to pray. That's the only reason to stop. Just agree one night, tonight we're not having it, we're going to spend the night praying, and then get back into it. Why? Because God has designed sex also for rescuing us from adultery. So be intimate with your spouse, and of course, you can say the wife does not have authority over her own body, the husband in the same way does not have authority over his own body. I believe this does not only apply to sex, it also applies to, like, when your wife said to you late at night, go downstairs and get me a drink of water. You don't have no control of your body. Or your wife said to you, don't go whaikawa tonight, right? So you're not in control of your body. So it can be applied to other things and not only sex. So yes, intimacy is not a sin in marriage. I know that because in Tongan context we use so many dirty names to explain something which is good and pure, and God designs it for our enjoyment in marriage. One night I was asked in the Fofoanga Club here in Sydney whether it's dirty. This is how they put it in the Tongan way. Whether it's dirty to sleep with my wife. One of my friends at Fofoanga, and I said, look, unfortunately, we have all these dirty words about it, but with your wife, it's pure, it's perfect. There was a book written by the pastor who looked after us at the University of New South Wales when I was a student there, called Pure Sex. And that's the idea. Pure sex is the sex that God had designed, that sex, to have in marriage. It's pure in marriage. The next one, is there a fine line before it becomes lust? That's a very good question. Now, if you find a person beautiful, right, that's admiration. You look at the person, oh, that's a beautiful person, beautiful girl, or beautiful man or boy. That's admiration. Okay? When you start looking at a person with a longing, a desire in your heart for him or for her, Jesus says that is lust. And then I said before, this is the whole pornographic industry. It's not helping us in this way. And if you're a guy who's having problem with this, or if you're a person who is having problem with pornography, you need to talk to someone. You can talk to me, or you can even admit it to your spouse. I know that there has been some suggestion that pornography will help our marriage. It's not true. See, pornography is unrealistic, right? And this is the statistics that I got. The statistics that I got says that 52% of pastors who believe the Bible in America. This is a survey in 2009, if my recollection serves me correctly. So what I'm saying is, if 1 in every 2 pastors are having problem with this thing, pornography, I'm sure it's a problem for almost all of us guys. And it's not helping any marriage. In fact, I know of one marriage that ended in divorce because the guy was so addicted to pornography that he had to leave his wife. So very sad, but lust is now, we are kind of dragged into it by the availability and the easy accessibility of pornography online. When people say Jesus is the center of their relationship, what should that look like? So that's the next question. Well, if you say that Jesus is the center of your marriage or of your boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, then you want to exalt Jesus in the way you relate to each other. So what does it mean to exalt Jesus? Well, to exalt Jesus means is to live your relationship life to be pleasing to Jesus in every way. And guys and girls, the Lord created us with His law in our hearts. This is Romans chapter 2. The Lord has written His law in our hearts. So this is why it only needs the Spirit of God to activate His word. When you read His word, it just confirms what's already in your heart. Joseph knew that adultery was wrong. Joseph in Egypt refused to sleep with Potiphar's wife. He knew that before the law was given to Moses that says, thou shalt not commit adultery. How did he know that? It's already written in his heart. But you need the Spirit of God to activate it, to empower it. So you know what it means to exalt Jesus in your heart of hearts. In marriage, the husband is meant to love his wife sacrificially, which means, husbands, we must always be ready to start the reconciliation process, to be always ready to forgive and to love and cherish your wife. You know, if you are a married couple here, I would suggest that you should have one night as a dating night. And guys, you remember what you did to your wife before you got married? While you were still dating, how you were so consumed with passion that you just can't go a moment of the day without thinking of her and texting her and saying that you love her and you miss her and that you want to be with her. You should continue to do that. That's what will keep any marriage going. What you did when you were dating, go back and rethink about it and do it now in your married life, because it'll keep you staying married. So you will glorify the Lord Jesus. Just go away and have a cup of coffee. Put the children in with your in-laws, or if you have your parents nearby, ask them to give an hour in to look after your kids while you enjoy your time together. It's always good. You don't have to talk about marriage. Just go away and just enjoy some times with each other. Just talk about anything. If it's a boy-girl relationship that is Jesus-centered, then you would acknowledge Jesus knows your heart, right? So your heart is always in the presence of Jesus. So you won't go anywhere near things like arousals or things that will incite lust in your relationship. You keep the purity of the relationship. See, it's your heart that matters. Because some people in their hearts, if you hold hand, your heart is not running off to all kinds of practical sexual things. But if once you hold hand, you feel in your hearts that it's going to all kinds of things, then you better stop. How do you know if the person you are in relationship with is really God's will? I have 6 things to say here. 1, if you are already married to the person, well, it's God's will for you to be with that person, because God forbids divorce. Secondly, if the person you are in relationship with is a person from the opposite sex, you know it's God's will, because God creates male and female in the beginning. Thirdly, if the other person is not already married or in a separation or already in another sexual relationship, then you shouldn't date that person, because they're already committed sexually, if not, publicly, to another person. God forbids sexual immorality and adultery. So if the person you're dating is already married, it's not God's will for you. Fourthly, if you're a believer, the other person should be a believer too, because God says, as I said before, He wants godly offspring. Fifthly, if your person of interest is not a close relative, then you know it's God's will for you. And sixthly, if you're not already sleeping with the other person. See, if you're already sleeping with the other person, I think you should get married. If the other person is not committed, he will not be committed at all. And let me say this. If they're not committed now, well, what makes you think that if you keep giving yourself to them, then eventually they'll be thinking of committing to you? The more you give yourself to them, the more they'll be thinking, no, this is not the kind of relationship to be committed to. So you should ask them, look, do you want to marry me? If they say, I'll think about it, that's the sure sign that you should leave that relationship. That is, if you're already involved sexually. Next question, what if your partner is an unbeliever? There are 2 situations here. If you're already married, then you have to stay with the unbelieving person. Secondly, if you were both unbelievers before marriage and then afterwards you become a believer, if your spouse still wants you to stay married to you, then 1 Corinthians 7, 13 and 14 says you can stay in the marriage. But if they want to leave, then they could leave, right? You could have divorce. If they can't stand living with it doesn't have to be you initiating it. I've already heard of some person saying, look, I'm married to an unbeliever, so God's will for me is to divorce him. No. It doesn't have to come from you. You should not be the one initiating if you're the Christian, you should love the non-believer, to live with them, learn to live with them, show them the grace of God. But if the unbeliever wants to leave, then yes, of course, you can't do anything about it. Now, if you're dating an unbeliever, you should know that it's not God's will for you to do that. You are kidding yourself if you think you'd evangelize the unbeliever. That doesn't happen. There's a better chance for the unbelieving person, boyfriend or girlfriend, to become a believer if you leave them now. And clear cut is always easier than, dragging them apart. Clear cut is the easiest way to cut a relationship. So clear cut would probably show them, this unbelieving person, that there is something far more important in your life than him or her, this unbeliever. Next question. With this topic seen as taboo in Tongan culture, how can we change that mindset or approach it without being disrespectful? Or should God's word always trump that? Well, as I said before, in Tonga, when I was in Tonga, I got on the radio and talked about sex. And my ministerial colleagues in the Wesleyan Church were not happy with it. They were embarrassed. And they were giving me all kinds of suggestions. And maybe I said to them, look, we need to talk about this thing in public to show people that God talks about it publicly without excusing himself. Listen to this. Let me read to you this. This is Proverbs. I'm reading from Proverbs chapter 5. And this is what I meant. When God talks about sex, he talks about it as something beautiful. He doesn't say, oh, hufanga te whakatapu or something like this. Listen, this is how God talks about sex. This is Proverbs chapter 5, verses 15 to 20. Drink water from your own cistern. So your wife is your cistern. So he's talking to his son. This is Solomon talking to his son. So Proverbs is a father talking to his son about sex and all kinds of other subjects. Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the street, your streams of water in the public square, let them be yours alone, never be to be shared with strangers. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why embrace the bosom of a wayward woman? You see that? God doesn't say, oh, hufanga te whakatapu, may her breast satisfy you always. No. Sometimes it's very good to take the Bible literally, my friends. And yeah, you know what I mean. So I think our culture has consolidated the devil's lie about sex, that the Bible is anti-sex, that God didn't mean for us to enjoy it, he didn't invent it. That's all lies. Because as I've shown you, and hopefully I have shown you, God was the designer of sex as a tool to be used for producing godly offspring, tool to be used for fellowship in marriage, tool to be used to making the two people one, right? One flesh. So you should be convinced that sex was God's design, good design for marriage between one woman and one man in order to multiply and fill the earth. It was his design for having children. It was to be enjoyed in the context of marriage. And then, of course, it's because of the fall, the entrance of sin, and that's why sex becomes a taboo subject, even in our culture. But you see, God wrote a whole book in the subject of sex, and that's the Song of Songs, right? So God is the best person to whom we should go for instructions on what sex is about and how to rightly use it for our enjoyment. And the Bible is the best book to talk about, to use to talk about sex. And I read to you what King Solomon says to his son. I think Proverbs was written by Solomon when he was a little bit older. Song of Songs, he must have written that when he was a young man enjoying sex. Some people say that Song of Songs is about the church and Christ, but let me say to you, no, it's primarily about sexual intimacy, and then secondarily about Jesus and his church. But of course, sex is something good that God had wanted for us to enjoy in marriage. So we need if you're a parent and you have a 5-year-old, you need to start kind of introducing to them, talking to them, you to think about how they were here. See, we need to start talking about sex to our kids at home, following Solomon's example in Proverbs and Song of Songs. And they say, that is, the statistics are telling me that you should do it when they are 10 or 11 years old. It's a bit too late after that. Next question is, if I'm single, what should I be looking for in the opposite sex for it to be godly? The first thing is to look to God and trust in Him for His guidance if you need a long life partner. Pray, 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 I would say. If you're a single woman, look for a man who is loving like Christ, always looking out for your good, not in order to get something from you in return. See, we're all self-centered. And a man would kind of come to you and profess his love and all these things and give you almost everything, but it's for something that is usually sex. So if that's what this guy is doing, you know that they're not godly. They will not make a good husband in the future. It has to be a selfless man like Christ. A man, and also it should be a man who is trustworthy with his words. If you're in a relationship, that's the real test of this person. See what they tell you. If they say some things, even especially the small things, if they say those things, not doing that, well, that's not a man that you can trust in marriage. And remember, I always, as I tell you before, this is the best you can get while you're still dating them. If you're a single man, look for a woman who is keen to listen to you, but not as a doormat. I don't want my daughters to be treated as doormats by these guys. But look for a girl who is able to discuss things with you without getting angry or using anger as a way of manipulating you to take her opinion or her viewpoint. But look for a woman who can love like Christ, laying down, and even a woman that you think you can lay down your life for her, when you're dating a person, you got to look at her now in her 20s, and then imagine when she is 40, 60, and 80-year-old. And tell yourself, can I still be loving this person? When all the teeth are falling out and you both have dentures and you borrow each other's dentures. I don't think that they do that, but anyway. So you have to look at the person, because you're going to live with this person, right? See, we live in a world where it seems to us that the rich people, there is an expiry date for their wives and they do away with them and look for a younger person, but that's not for us. Christian Bible believers, you should look carefully and prayerfully consider. Is arranged marriage biblical? Yes. In fact, I believe in it, as I told you. See, we've been led to astray, by this culture telling us that it's about falling in and falling out of love. But as I said, our culture think that love is this emotional surge of chemicals in our body that you have for this other person. You see, it's all chemicals, it's all chemistry for this world, not for us Christians, you see, because, and even for us who are married, we know that the chemistry is gone after the day of the wedding. You know how in the fairy tales, when the princess got to the prince and they get married, every fairy tale that I read, Snow White, Cinderella, and then they got on the horse and they ride out to the sunset. Because to me, that's almost like a message about marriage. You get married, all the wedding and the hoo-has and all the fans, and then you get on the horse, you ride out to darkness. And that's what most of us find in our marriage. There's no perfect marriage. Even my marriage, not perfect. I learn all these things by the mistakes I made in the past and by reading the Bible, and I come to see maybe I can help another generation to be godly, because I was never told these things. No one in Tonga, no minister, no church program, no youth program, said it in their agenda to talk to us about, marriage, dating, marriage, and sex. But anyway, so because we've been taught that love is about falling in love, we tend to think that it's about chemistry. But the Bible tells us that love is not about chemistry, it's about commitment. You have to commit yourself to a person, to love them for better, for worst. Those of you who are married, I'm not sure whether you remember what you said in your vow on the wedding day. But I see, because as a minister I get to marry other people, I'm reminded of what I said. And for better, for worst, I still keep them in the vows that I use when I marry people. Because you see, when we get